Am I the antagonist for calling my stepsister a murderer after she repeatedly referred to abortion as murder? I am 23 years old and pro-choice. My older stepsister, Jane, who is 29, is very pro-life and often refers to abortion as murder. She is married to John, who is 32, and he is also quite religious and against abortion. Jane and John follow strict Christian values and are vocal about it. My parents, who are my father and stepmother, raised me since I was 4. They are pro-choice in cases of rape, incest, and when the life of the mother is at risk, and they also support dilation and curettage procedures for non-abortive purposes. On Sunday, we had a family brunch after going to church. My parents and I are Presbyterian while Jane and John are Baptist. The topic of abortion came up because Jane and John's pastor mentioned it. Jane started her usual speech about how abortion is murder and how anyone who supports it goes against Christian values. I have heard this countless times and usually try to stay out of it to keep the peace, as do my parents. This time, however, she specifically called me out, saying I am a disgrace to our family and to God because of my pro-choice views. She went on about how I am not living according to Christian values and how disappointed she is in me. I revealed that I had to have a medical procedure in high school, where I had a uterine fistula removed when I was 17. She said I should repent for my sin. I was tired of her holier-than-thou attitude and constant judgment, but revealing my medical history to her husband was the last straw for me. In the heat of the moment, I snapped and said, "At least I'm not a murderer by your standard, but you are," referring to the fact that Jane had an abortion in college, which she had confided to me a few years ago when she was drunk. Jane's face went white and John looked shocked. He had no idea about the abortion. Jane stormed out of the room and John followed, demanding answers. Now, the whole family is upset with me for exposing Jane's secret and causing a huge rift in their marriage. Jane is furious and won't speak to me. My parents are disappointed, and John is devastated. I feel bad for how things turned out, but I am also angry that Jane keeps shaming me for my beliefs when she hasn't been honest about her past and was acting like a hypocrite. Am I the antagonist?
Am I the antagonist for telling my husband that my doctor knows more than he does and refusing to forgive him? Hello, everyone. My husband and I have been married for 4 years and together for 6. And this is the very first huge argument we've ever had. I am currently 33 weeks pregnant with his baby. When I was 20 weeks pregnant, my doctor diagnosed me with placenta previa, which means the placenta is covering the opening in my cervix. They told me it would likely move as my baby grew, but it never did. So I am scheduled for a cesarean section in just 3 weeks. At 20 weeks, I was put on very light restrictions, but at 30 weeks, I got put on heavier restrictions, like no running, no lifting or climbing, no standing for longer than 3 hours at a time, and most importantly, no sex and no vaginal exams. My doctor explained that we want to avoid anything that could potentially cause me to bleed, which could lead to preterm birth. I have been following these restrictions for 3 weeks, but it has been driving my husband crazy. Every single day, he asks me for sex. I tell him I can't and remind him of the restrictions. Honestly, I don't even want to have sex anyway. My belly is so big and I am always exhausted. He doesn't really like those answers. Finally, he came to me and started saying that doctors sometimes exaggerate things for their careers and to make more money. He claimed they push for cesarean sections. I was frustrated but knew I had to follow the rules. He didn't accept my answer, and we ended up having sex. A few hours later, I experienced heavy bleeding, and I got so scared. I was crying in the bathroom, trying to figure out what to do. I called my doctor, and she told me to come in, right away. During the car ride there, I was sobbing, imagining that in an hour I would be having a cesarean section for a baby that was only 33 weeks old. When I got to the doctor's office, we quickly determined that I was not in preterm labor. I was just bleeding, and as long as it stopped, everything would be okay. It did, and I am fine. However, while I was there, my doctor asked my husband to leave and started asking me questions. She wanted to know if I had done anything I wasn't supposed to do. She assured me it wasn't accusatory. It was just important to know if the bleeding was caused by something specific. I told her that I had sex. She reiterated the restrictions and then gave me information about domestic violence. She literally put the information in my purse. I was so embarrassed. When we got into the car, I broke down and yelled at my husband, telling him to never do that to me again, and that my doctor knows more than he does and knows what is best for me and the baby. He apologized, and I could tell he really meant it. However, I have still been holding a grudge for days, and he has been trying to make it up to me. He asked me how long I was going to make him apologize. I told him at least until the baby is born. Am I the bad person for that?
Am I the antagonist for starting the divorce process after finding out my daughter is not biologically mine? My life feels like a bad drama show at the moment. For some context, I am 33 years old, and my wife is 30. We have been married for 7 years, and what I thought was our daughter is 3 years old. Looking back, this all started after my wife gave birth to her daughter. She suddenly became a lot more affectionate and was more active with me in our intimate life. She also made my favorite desserts a lot more often, as she is a fantastic baker. I, of course, didn't suspect anything since, even prior to her pregnancy, there were no signs of infidelity. It's also possible that I just didn't look closely enough into it. Well, this whole situation started 2 weeks ago after a day out with her daughter. She sat me down in the evening and came clean about the fact that her daughter wasn't mine. She started crying and explained that the father was a guy from the gym. Their relationship lasted a month before he disappeared when he found out she was pregnant. Honestly, even typing this now makes me feel like crying because I thought I did everything perfectly. But she still cheated. As much as I wish I could say I remained emotionless, I started crying. She tried to comfort me, but I pushed her away because I felt so disgusted. After I calmed down a bit, I grabbed my jacket and left for a hotel. As I was leaving, she begged and pleaded for my forgiveness, saying I was the only father her daughter knew. After crying myself to sleep in the hotel the next day, when I turned my phone back on, I saw that she had sent me numerous messages. I didn't read any of them and just blocked her. After having a little breakfast, I contacted a lawyer to start the divorce process. At work, I asked for some time off, and my boss gave me a month off. By the evening, my mom and sister were calling me on her behalf and were on her side, which hurt me even more. While I'm not proud to admit this, I drank myself to sleep that night. After that night, I started staying with my best friend, but my mom and sister kept calling and texting me. A few days later, after she probably received the divorce papers, my mom sent me a long message summarizing her thoughts. She urged me to step up, forgive my wife, and not abandon my daughter. She also said she would disown me if I went through with the divorce. My sister and mom are against my decision to divorce her, but my best friend and his wife believe I have the right to choose not to be with her or take care of her child. I'm torn. On one hand, I have raised the baby for 3 years, but on the other hand, I don't know if I could in good conscience raise the reminder of my wife's affair. To add some context, my sister is infertile, which I believe is partly why my mom doesn't want me to proceed with the divorce, as she fears losing her grandchild.
Am I the antagonist for wanting to divorce my husband and leave him with our child after discovering that I am not the biological mother? I can't believe my life has come to this. All I ever do is go out of my way to help others, but on the few occasions I need help, nobody ever comes through for me. I am 36 years old and have been with my husband, who is 35, for almost 10 years, married for 7. We welcomed what I thought was my child by surrogate over 2 years ago. After 4 years of trying to conceive with no success, despite medical interventions, I found out I am unable to carry a child to term. I had always wanted to be a mom. Devastated is an understatement when I discovered my medical condition that made it nearly impossible to carry a baby to term. It was even more upsetting when I had to undergo major surgery to remove uterine growths, which resulted in a partial hysterectomy. I still had my ovaries, so we started looking into the cost of a surrogate. It's really expensive. A close friend from college who had already had 2 kids offered to serve as the surrogate to help us cut down on costs. After 2 unsuccessful in vitro fertilization sessions, she became pregnant on the 3rd try and carried a boy to term for us. I was overjoyed and busy after the birth, juggling being a mom and returning to work after a 4-week parental leave, so I didn't notice any warning signs. I should have noticed the red flags early on, but I was exhausted from working multiple jobs to cover most of our bills and the anticipated medical and legal costs associated with this friend becoming our surrogate. I was the primary breadwinner. My friend and my husband started talking more, and I would sometimes come home from my weekend job to find her already at our house when my husband was there. I thought it was nice for them to know each other better since she was carrying our child. I was grateful to have someone helping us. I also thought it was strange that our son has brown eyes when both of us have blue. Then I learned that while this is uncommon, it's sometimes possible due to many genes controlling eye color. Recently, everything came to a head when I took our son to a doctor's appointment. The test showed that he had a blood type that is not biologically possible to have with me as his mother. Immediately, I started worrying it was the fertility clinic's fault and that they had implanted the wrong embryo. I began lining up consultations with lawyers to possibly sue the clinic and looked into having a DNA parentage test done. The test results showed that I am not the mother, but my husband is still the father. I was heartbroken and angrier than ever and spoke with lawyers about medical malpractice at the fertility clinic we used. Then my husband confessed that he had slept with my friend, our surrogate, during our struggle to have her get pregnant with our embryos. This means what I thought was our son conceived through in vitro fertilization and carried by a surrogate isn't my son at all and was conceived the old-fashioned way, which I cannot do. Livid and broken does not begin to describe how I feel. I have been breaking down into crying spells repeatedly over this. He claims he didn't think pregnancy could result because he used the withdrawal method and always assumed he was the reason for our earlier struggles to conceive. I felt an immediate triple betrayal. From my husband, from my friend, and now knowing my child isn't even really mine. In a fit of rage, I left home and stayed at a hotel for almost a week before asking my parents if I could stay with them for a while. I admit I left our son with him. I am now filing for divorce because he cheated and betrayed me in the worst possible way. I have also cut off my friendship with my friend, the surrogate, and I feel afraid to trust anyone else now. I have consulted with a divorce lawyer about giving up my legal rights to this child, so I don't have to face such betrayal or owe child support. My husband and my friend admit they were wrong and keep apologizing, but also called me immature and heartless for wanting to give up on my son. My parents told me I cannot just give up on a child that I went through so many legal and medical hoops to have. When I told them I refused to stay in a marriage with a cheater, and that I would rather adopt someday with a better, more trustworthy partner, they insisted I was wrong, and that maintaining my parental rights isn't much different from adopting outright. They said it isn't blood that makes a family. They support my decision to divorce my cheating husband, but keep telling me I am making a mistake by giving up my parental rights. Some of my other friends agree with my decision, while a few admitted they couldn't care for an affair baby or face daily reminders of my friend's betrayal every time they look at him. I just want a clean break and a fresh start. I am also considering relocating several states away. Am
I the antagonist for calling off my engagement because my fiancé spends time with someone she feels she lacks self-control around when it comes to sex? I was engaged to my girlfriend, and we had been together for about 3 years. To celebrate, we took our friends out and we all had a bit to drink. During the evening, one of her friends started sharing some details about my girlfriend's past. The friend mentioned that my girlfriend had finally managed to control her wild side, but she never could control herself around her male friend. Let's call him Bob. From what I learned about Bob, he used to hook up regularly with my girlfriend. After we got home, I asked my girlfriend more questions about her ability to control herself, I had to press her for information, and she eventually confessed that she cheated on her previous boyfriends with Bob, and Bob cheated with her. She admitted that her exes never found out about it. Bob and my girlfriend still hang out from time to time as they have been friends since college. Now I find myself, her boyfriend and former fiancé, struggling with trust issues toward her. I asked for the engagement ring back. She insisted that nothing happened with Bob since we got together. But after learning all of this, I just can't believe her.
Thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe to Monumental Stories for new videos every day.